Hello and welcome to a Talmud Israeli production. Today we'll review the highlights of this week's course of Daf Yomi study, Masechet Yevamot, pages 90 through 96. Tzadi, 90. Amar Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, Shamati shebetin makin ronshin shalom min haTorah. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov said, I heard that it's true that the courts will give people punishment and even flog people, corporal punishment, not in the manner consistent with the Torah, meaning for infractions that objectively do not qualify for a Torah punishment. However, they do not do this in order to flagrantly violate the Torah's laws. It's not with any intent to rebel. Rather, it was to put a fence around the Torah to protect Judaism. There's a story involving a person who rode a horse on the Sabbath. In the days of the Greeks. And they brought him to the court and he was stoned to death. Not because objectively that was the appropriate punishment. Rather because the hour required it. Meaning that skila, punishment with capital punishment, is appropriate for Torah violations of the Sabbath law. However, that's only for the 39 malachot. Riding a horse is not one of the malachot. It's only a rabbinic decree. So really there should have been some lesser form of punishment. But what happened? This was a time of flagrant Sabbath desecration by many, many people in the days of assimilation under the Greeks. And so the rabbis felt it was necessary to make an example out of this one person by overdoing it with the punishment to serve as a warning to everyone else, you better get in line. And that we're not going to tolerate cavalier attitudes towards the Shabbos. Tzadi Aleph, 91. Katav l'shem malchut shena hogenet, l'shem malchut madai, l'shem malchut yavan, l'bidin habayit, l'chun habar bayit, tetzeh mizeh mizeh. A get is supposed to be written according to the official calendar system, the calendrical system that is in vogue among the Jewish community. And if you use an inappropriate calendar system, the get will be invalid. So here the Gemara says if you used the Malchut Shna Hogenet, the Roman Empire, which is a evil empire, or outdated empires like the Median Empire, the Greek Empire, they're gone from the earth. So why would you reckon your years according to their system? They're out of this world. Or the construction of the temple, the Holy Temple of Jerusalem, or the destruction of the temple. Those are very Jewish reckoning systems, however, we're not using them. So if you try to use them for a get, the get is invalid. In fact, what do we use? We use Anno Mundi, or the creation of the world, Briat HaOlam, that according to the Seder Olam, it's been 5,782 years since the world was created. That is our system. To use any other system was run into trouble. Tzadi Bet, 92. Ha'omer le'isha, if a person were to say to a woman, man says to a woman, Hari mekudeshli, behold, you're betrothed to me, lachashet gayer, after I convert to Judaism. So he isn't Jewish yet. And he says, I'm going to be married to you after I convert. Lachashetit gari, or after you convert, because she's not Jewish yet. Lachash yemut balech, or after your husband dies. She's married right now to another man. And he says, I'll be married to you when your husband dies. Or after your sister dies, because right now the man is married to her sister, and he can't be married to two sisters simultaneously. So after your sister dies, my current wife, then you'll be my wife. Or after your yavam gives you chalitza, because now you're unavailable, but after your chalitza you will be available. In all these instances where the marriage cannot take place right now, it's projecting to the future something that simply cannot take place now because of halacha constraints. Eina mekudeshet, the kedushin does not count, doesn't work. Tzadi Gimel, 93. Lo taskir eved al adonav. Torah forbids a person to send back a slave to its master. What are we talking about here? The Torah is talking about someone who acquires a Canaanite slave with the stipulation or on the condition that he will emancipate that slave upon acquiring him. When I will acquire you, behold, you are hereby a freed person from now. So you can't go back on that word. If you made such a promise, means there's no turning back. You got to let him go. Tzadi Daled, 94. So why is it that we'll allow a woman to remarry after having been told by the testimony of one witness, not two witnesses, but one witness, who's normally invalid for testimony, because you normally require two, but now you only have one, will allow her to remarry, and we're not worried that maybe it'll turn out to be incorrect, false testimony. So why do we allow this? Because she's going to be careful not to take any chances. She's going to verify the legitimacy of that testimony. She's going to make sure it's true and honest and not a lie. But when it comes to allowing a woman who is now in a Yibum situation where there's a Yavam and she wants to marry to the outside world and someone says, your Yavam died, we do not allow her to go ahead and marry to the outside world. What's the difference? If we allowed in the case of a regular husband, why shouldn't we allow the case of a Yavam? And the Gemara answers, Mishum de Misnahu de Misana le Yavam. It's possible that this woman hates her husband's brother, her would-be Yavam. And she's very happy to hear that he's dead, and that she now is allowed to marry someone else. So since she has a vested interest in the truth of this statement of the one witness, and she's not going to investigate it so carefully because she really wants it to be true, then we're not going to rely upon that alone. Tzadihei. 95. What is the nature of marriage? Before marriage is contracted, she can marry any man in the world, and he can marry any woman in the world. Kidsha, but once the betrothal occurs, the kiddushin, she prohibits him and he prohibits her. But they're not analogous. One is much more intense than the other. The prohibitions imposed upon her are far greater than that imposed upon him. He forbids her to marry anyone else, any other man. In the world. But she only prohibits him to marry her relatives. Okay. 96. Shota v'katan shenasu v'metu neshoteim petur min hachalitza min hayibum. If a minor or a deranged person were to get married and then die, the widow of that minor or that deranged person is not obligated to submit to chalitza or yibum because there really was no marriage. Since a katan and a shota are incapable of contracting a legally recognized and binding kiddushin. So since there was no real kiddushin, there's no need for an yibum or chalitza, but rather the supposed widow can go free and marry whoever she would like. Everyone have a great week.